Right, part 2, chapter 9. Both Oblomov and Olga have levelled up. They're in love. Olga's now a woman. She's gone from being a flirtatious little girl to a fully fledged woman who's in love, woman who's in control, woman who no longer feels the need to go to her aunt to ask for advice on how to behave. A strong woman. And it says here that who else would she go to anyway? Stolz was not around. And as for Oblomov, well, he was just the Galatea to her Pygmalion. So, of course, I had to look that up. We've got some Greek mythology going on here. Pygmalion is a sculptor who falls in love with the statue he has made called Galatea, which is then brought to life by Aphrodite. So she's moulding Oblomov. She's sculpting him. She's making him. So we'll get into that a bit more as we go through the chapter. There's another literary reference that comes up in a moment as well, which is fascinating. But let's look at Olga. What does it say about her? Okay, here's a quote. The trees in the wood were the same, but the rustling of the leaves took on a new significance that spoke of some active complicity between them and her. The birds no longer simply chirped or twittered, but were talking to one another. Everything around her now spoke to her. Everything responded to her mood. If a flower opened, it was as if she heard its breathing. So she's fully connected to the world. And as I read that, you remember we spoke a bit before about depression. This struck me as being the opposite of depression. But then as I was writing my notes, I was like, actually, I don't think depression has an opposite. I think it's like a spectrum, a scale. And this is an example of the absence of depression. Does that make sense? That's kind of how I'm thinking of it. She's fully connected. There's love in her heart and everything just feels good, you know? You ever experienced that? I have. And then we look at Ilya. His old apathy had left him from the very moment she had first sung to him. He no longer lived the old life where nothing mattered. Now, night and day, and indeed every single hour, had its own mood, ranging from sheer glorious radiance to lustreless gloom, depending whether that hour had been filled with Olga's presence or had dragged by tediously and emptily without her. So there's a bit of an obsession going on here, I feel, which, although it's kind of portrayed as being a joyful situation, is it? You know, it's like, without her, life has no meaning. And there's a lovely quote here where it says, "Love, it really is life's hardest school." I mean, isn't it though? Where would we be without it? And it's kind of, we get into a discussion later on about the difference between obsessive, passionate love, like Ilya's clearly feeling, and a more stable, steady kind of love. And at one point he says, "I am in love with you. Are you in love with me?" And she's like, "I don't know." And he talks about love that one has for one's father or for one's pets. And it's a different kind of love. And this is where we get into the other literary reference, which is Cordelia. And I had to look that up as well. Thankfully, there are notes at the back of the book. Those words could be Cordelia's. Cordelia is the youngest daughter of King Lear in Shakespeare's play of the same name. When asked to profess publicly her love for her father in return for a third of his kingdom at the beginning of the play, her honesty and integrity prevent her from giving a flattering response, unlike her sisters Regan and Goneril, and she is banished from the kingdom as a punishment. So, yeah, let's take a look at this quotation here. Ilya says to Olga, I'm here to tell you that I am in love with you, and that's the only kind of love that counts. No one is in love with their father, mother, or nanny. They just love them. So he's kind of codependent in a sense. We've got that idea of Galatea making a sculpture. Ilya is very much the sculpture here. She says, life is duty, responsibilities, so love is also a duty. It's as if it were sent to me by God, she added, raising her eyes to the heavens. And he commanded me to love. So it's interesting that Ilya is reliant upon her love for meaning and purpose in his life. And it says that he's getting his life together. He's contacted the bailiff and sacked him. He's not eating supper late at nights. She's got him doing all kinds of things, reading books, answering questions, going on research missions, going on errands sometimes, which mean staying overnight in an inn with no one to take off his boots. Imagine that. So he's basically just running around after her, and she's kind of enjoying it, I get that feeling. And it says that the time for suggestive hints, for significant smiles, for the symbolism of sprigs of lilac was past. Love now came out boldly, demanding, exacting, transforming into a code of reciprocal rights and obligations. So they've moved on from that flirtatious kind of early stage, and they're now into establishing their roles in the relationship. It was not so much, however, her reproaches that recharged his energies as the fact that he noticed his own weariness wearied her and had the effect of making her chilly and distant. So when he starts to slip into his old ways, if there's even a hint of that, it causes her to react in a negative way. So he's not slipping into his old ways, not for himself, but for her, because he sees that it causes her, I don't know, dismay, a loss of serenity, and he doesn't want to upset her, so he's doing it for her, not for him. That's a problem, I think. But all these actions and reactions were confined within the charmed circle of love. His activity was essentially negative, finding a real purpose in life, finding something to do, all that remained within the realm of intention. So, he's not finding agency for himself, obsession, love, passion. Isn't it strange how joy and sorrow seem to produce the same symptoms? Well, isn't that a line? The churning, the turmoil, the lack of serenity, joy and sorrow can produce that. And he's worried that she doesn't believe in his love. I mean, she does. She clearly does. But he feels this constant need for reassurance. If he's away from her for any length of time, he feels a need to be back with her again just for reassurance. So there's doubt there. And she says to him, "You must believe me," she said earnestly, "just as I believe you, and stop those doubts. If you keep on nagging away at your happiness with this questioning, it will fly out the window." In other words, she's not into this constant doubt. She sees the relationship in her mind as being stable, but his need for constant reassurance, it's a bit grating, and I can relate to this. I don't need to go into details, but let's just say it's relatable. And so that's kind of where we leave it. We get a whole bit of flowery prose describing their love in terms of hues and tints, which I'm not going to lie, I didn't understand that much, to be honest. Olga's buzzing on the effect that she's having on Ilya, the power she has over him. That's kind of what I got from that last scene. The flowery prose. It was beautifully written, but let me know what you think of all of that. The last couple of paragraphs. Did it make sense to you? Because, yeah, not to me. I'd love to hear what you think. Thanks for watching.